Andrew Huberman is an American podcaster, neuroscientist. He is an associate professor of neurology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine and a partner of the sports and nutrition company Momentos, with which he offers branded dietary supplements. Okay. So this man is huge in the podcast space. I think a lot of his stuff is really good in terms of just providing people good scientific information. But lately, he's been talking more and more about his faith. And he is on this channel with Cameron Haynes. And they have a really interesting conversation. And he kind of opens up a bit about his faith tradition.
Who do you pray to?
Oh, what a good question. Who do you pray to?
That's an interesting one because I think God. Yeah. So I absolutely
praise to God.
do. I've actually started reading the Bible recently.
All right. He was reading the Bible. This is amazing.
To finish. I feel like it's my duty to like learn and in some sense compare Old and New Testament. I'm really interested in the stories, but I'm fascinated by the story of us, right? And the story of everything. And so, but yeah, I pray out loud in the morning, sometimes again in the middle of the night if I wake up.
Come on.
And it's only recently that I've been doing this more often.
It's giving you peace?
Oh my goodness. It's given me so much. It's given me peace. And you know, it's going to sound weird and probably people are going to be like, what are you talking about? It works. It works. There's a way in which certain things I was grappling with, you know, I just couldn't resolve. I couldn't do it. And it was all internal and I just couldn't do it.
How were you trying to resolve these things? Like have an answer?
Yeah, discipline myself. I mean, it wasn't like I was super, undisciplined. I mean, obviously I have a lot of self-discipline, but you know, I always pray, you know, I want to remove my defects of character. I want to, you know, I certainly pray for other people. I mostly, you know, these days I pray for the ability to really harness as much care and love for other people and for myself.
Wow. It's so refreshing to hear scientists talk like this.
Something I haven't been that good at in my lifetime in order to be able to put the best possible work into the world.
I mean, this is fascinating. You got Jordan Peterson. You got Joe Rogan consistently talking more and more and more about faith. And now Andrew Huberman. Like this is really fascinating to me.
To really serve. Like I really see myself as serving higher power. Like I'm a conduit.
Right.
Wow.
And the better I can do that, the better I'm serving. The better I'm serving, the more I feel connected to humanity.
Do you think that with this, I don't know if you've always felt like this. It sounds like it's more of a newer feeling. But
somewhat, although secretly.
Yeah.
Like in Santa Barbara, I'll just say there's this place, Sands Beach, down at the end of the beach, if anyone's ever been there. And I used to run down there once a week. I always did a long run, long for me, run on Sunday, minus a 72-pound rock.
Right.
And I would pray. And I just pray for, you know, be honest with myself, be honest with others.
Andrew Huberman says he's been secretly praying for a long time. So first time in the last year, he's been more outspoken about it. But this is so interesting, man. He's secretly been about this, even though he's a scientist and all in you know, the Stanford School of Medicine, all these types of things. But secretly, he said he's been praying.
And that was years ago.
I was 18.
Oh, okay.
19, 20. So, and then, you know, I've seen some hardship along the way. I mean, I would just mention that I've had 3 amazing scientific advisors. You know, Harry himself. 2 weeks after I told him we published a paper in Science, he said, come on down to Santa Barbara. It'd be great to take you out for pizza and celebrate. 2 weeks later, ate a bathtub. Barbara died of cancer when she was 50. I'm friends with her daughter. I, you know, saw her. She did have those 2 kids. One's a neuroscientist.
Oh man.
At McGill. And she was like a mom to me. She died. I was speaking at her memorial. And then my postdoc advisor died. He was a pretty impressive guy in his own right. And so at one point I'm thinking like, what's going on? You know, I'm the common denominator. How am I picking these people? But they were amazing. And, you know, I had some friends commit, you know, this kind of thing. And you know, you live long enough, that's going to happen. People are going to go. That's just the reality. But there were times I'm like, you know, it was dark. It was, you know, like, where am I? Why me? And at those moments too, just accepting that there's a plan and it's happening for a reason. And I don't know what it is. And just putting my trust in that has allowed me to grieve those things properly and to really try and, you know, I got the message, I got the download to take the lessons from them and just not waste a single day.
Wow. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful things about faith is that it helps you make sense of the suffering. It helps you make sense of why bad things happen. Because if we those of us who are followers of Jesus, and I'm not saying that he is, I don't know where he is, but he's saying he's reading the Bible in the New Testament, the Old Testament. But when we look at the story aspect, the gospel story, the perfect man lives the perfect life and dies a criminal's death for our sins in our place on the cross, and then rises from the grave and imputes his perfection, his righteousness onto us so that we may be reconciled back to God. right? So why are these bad things happening? Well, we have repeated stories in the scriptures of tragedy happening over and over, and it helps us to make sense of the suffering, right? And to extract the good from the bad, if you will.
And to do things that I really felt mattered. So to me, it's always been linked,
right,
to, sort of forces greater than me, certainly.
Does it feel like, when hearing all this, does it feel like once you've taken like a more, I don't know, intentional turn for being grateful and praying, you're not drinking since 2019, it seems like that's been in tandem with your success.
Absolutely.
Wow. He's saying that the steps in this direction to it sounds like he had some sort of alcohol issue, that cutting that out and leaning into the prayer. And again, I don't know where the Bible comes in. It seems like that's recent. He's saying that's a direct correlation to his public voice taking off. Fascinating.
I always wanted to have a deeper relationship to God. I always wanted that. And
I'm curious, if and when is he going to say Jesus? I'm so curious if that's going to come. Because that's really where like they say, oh, you're crazy. You start talking about you talk about God, you start talking about Jesus,
It's like, why don't I have that? Well, duh. That's like saying I want to be fit. Why I'm not fit? Well, because you're not running, you're not lifting, you're not doing the things. It was like, and it was a couple of different people that kept showing up in my life, and they were doing it, and it was like, well, pray. And I've learned, and I certainly try and do this, that a lot of prayer is about listening. And a lot of prayer is about you ask for things or listen for things, and then an hour later, 2 days later, you go, wait.
Come on.
Like, it doesn't happen in the moment necessarily.
Come on, Andrew Huberman. And again, this is such a great segue. Zach loves it when we have these natural segues. This is why we tell you guys to write down your prayers. This is why we have a prayer journal. I tell you guys to write down your prayers. Even if you can't get our prayer journals, $25.99. When you write down your prayers, you're more likely to remember them because you're documenting. They're going in a different part of your brain. If you're more likely to remember them, you're more likely to remember them when God answers your prayers. And he just said the answers aren't always instant.
An hour later, 2 days later, you go, wait.
Right.
Like, it doesn't happen in the moment necessarily, just like fitness. I don't want to compare fitness. I don't want to trivialize prayer by comparing to fitness, but there's some parallels that are relevant. Yeah.
It's consistent work.
Yeah, it's consistent work. And then all of a sudden, like, things come up and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. That makes so much sense. Now, I think that the success of the podcast, first of all, I'm incredibly grateful for it. Incredibly grateful. But in many ways, I'm doing exactly what I was doing when I was that 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kid. I'm learning and sharing.
Come on.
So it was always in me. And it always felt like this energy, this thing, like, it's like, how did I end up like this? How come all the other kids like don't have this? And how come sometimes it feels like a little bit of not a curse, but kind of a burden? Like, what do I do with this? And the deep satisfaction for me comes from acknowledging this is me. I've always been this way. It's not going to change. And that it's not coming from me, it's coming through me. And I just want to do right by it. And I think we talked a little bit.
It's a gift, and you're honoring your gift.
That's right.
Essentially.
Yes. Well,
and I feel like if we're honoring our gifts, we're rewarded.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest rewards recently comes from, we talked a little bit about this on the mountain today. It's like, for me.
Wow. Shout out to Andrew Huberman, man. That's amazing. I love this. I love him talking about it. I love the promotion of prayer. I mean, that really is the foundation for a lot of us, is the gospel of peace, the gospel of being reconciled to Jesus, and then us leaning into that prayer, that relationship with the Lord. That's so beautiful. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.